Hey, Joe here from Home Studio Corner talking about the Presonus StudioLive and DAW mode. You may recall when this mixer came out, they talked about how it's not only a mixer and an audio interface, but it can also be a control surface for Studio One and I believe other DAWs as well. When they first released it, DAW mode was not out. DAW mode has now been out for a while and I've had a chance to play around with it. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple of other videos, but specifically want to talk about a couple of things to keep in mind when setting it up. I'm not going to go step by step through setting it up because honestly, those steps are going to change every few months because the system changes or a firmware update or you're on a different piece of software. So go to Presonus' website for a step-by-step on how to set this up. But here are a couple of things that kind of tripped me up a little bit when I was trying to set it up, so let me talk through those with you. First thing to note, this thing does not use USB for its control surface functionality. It actually uses an Ethernet connection, not USB. USB is just for audio, then the control Ethernet jack on the back is the one you want to use it as a control surface. Now that doesn't seem terribly intuitive up front, but if you want to have enough bandwidth to carry 24 to 32 channels on your USB bus, it makes sense that Ethernet would be the way that it does all the control signaling. When I first set this up, I had to plug the Ethernet out of my board into my wireless router and then have my system, my studio computer, connected to that system as well, and that worked. Lately, I was in a studio where I plugged directly from the Ethernet in the back of the mixer, the control Ethernet, not the AVB port. There's two Ethernet ports. Use the control one for the control surface part. I connected that directly to the computer, and that seemed to work. So early on that didn't work, but on at least one system I've tried that did work. Once you connect those, then you should start to be able to see some of the things that you need to see to set it up as a control surface. Okay, on the board itself, it's pretty simple, especially with some of the latest firmware updates. You have to come over here to UC Net, and that's going to give you all your control options. First thing you do is under software control, if you don't see anything here, just tap on the little down jingamabob there, and then scroll through to find what emulation you want. So Huey control emulation for Pro Tools, Mackie control for Logic, or in my case, I'm going to use Studio One, and I can see my Studio iMac is showing up as an option. So if I tap that, now you can see the IP address, it just looks like it's set up correctly. The next thing you want to do, if you want to use the transport controls here on the mixer to control the transport in Studio One, you want to make sure that software control is engaged. Otherwise, these transport controls function for the SD card, which I haven't talked about because I haven't used that. Software control is your best bet there. And if all is well with the world, once it's set up properly, you should be able to pull up a session in Studio One, which I have here, come over here and press the DAW button, and wha-bam, you'll hear all the faders move and everything will change. And now if I move this tom track on my board, I am moving the tom track in Studio One. Isn't that fun? Hopefully you'll have a super easy time setting this up. When I first did it a few firmware versions back, I had some weird quirks where it would fire up and nothing would work and all the meters would be pegged. But just updating the firmware, or better yet, reinstalling the firmware or resetting the machine itself, doing a factory reset, that seems to always fix the problem. And you can look in the manual for how to do that. Just basically you revert back to older firmware, then you can reinstall the new firmware using the universal control application on your computer. Okay, those are just a couple of quick house cleaning things for using your StudioLive, specifically in DAW mode. In the next video, I'm going to share with you my favorite way to use it in DAW mode. Thanks for watching. See ya.